Michael Tellinger is an author, scientist, explorer, musician, an actor, a true Renaissance man, or 21st century Leonardo da Vinci. Michael became a real-life Indiana Jones, making groundbreaking discoveries about ancient vanished civilizations at the southern tip of Africa. His continued efforts and analytical scientific approach have produced stunning new evidence that will force us to rethink our origins and rewrite our history books. He has become one of South Africa's best-selling expert authors. His regular articles on human origins and his books have been praised by readers in over 20 countries. He is the author of Adamov Kalendár, Slave Species of God, and his latest, Temples of the African Gods. And directly from Panama City, Florida, somewhere in the United States, where he's conducting a 28-city tour from May the 6th through July 15th, 2011. And he will also be at the E-City Conference in Trout Lake, Washington from June 24th through the 27th, where I will also be attending and moderating a panel discussion with Michael and other speakers. It is my pleasure to introduce for the first time on Veritas another fellow truth seeker, Michael Tellinger. Hello, Michael, and welcome to Veritas. How are you?
Excellent. I'm very well, thank you. A little worn from the roads today, but very nice to be speaking to you, Mal.
My pleasure. Thank you for making the time. And folks, we've been communicating for the last few weeks, and Michael, every time I talk to him, he's been in a different continent, so at least I'm glad he's in my continent today. I must admit, I'm new to your work, Michael. In the past few days, I've been doing a lot of research about you, and let me tell you, I'm a dry sponge tonight, and I'm ready to absorb it all. I know our worldwide audience will be very satisfied with what they're about to experience. For those who may not know who you are, give us some background of yourself. And I know you've done a lot, but I'm curious to know what shaped the Michael Tellinger we know today.
Well, thanks very much. It's always difficult to talk about yourself. I personally don't like it. It feels like, you know, a little gloating session or whatever. But you know, I started out life in a musical family, being brought up in a classical music family. My mother was an opera singer in Europe, and I was constantly surrounded by musicians, and I attended classical concerts from a very early age, and operas and so forth. And then it was obvious that I always thought I would go into the music business or the music industry. It was just a natural extension. I didn't even consider anything else. That didn't turn out to be the case in many ways, because when I finished school, I went on to the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. That's the big sort of status university in South Africa, with the big medical school that's produced a lot of historic stuff. And I studied pharmaceutics at the medical school, and graduated in 1983. While I was studying, I was actively participating in the musical industry and playing a lot of golf. And I played music on stages. I did, for example, Joseph and his Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat for about 3 years. That ran. I played the part of Joseph. And then I had a band and a duo with called Sterling and Tellinger, and we had a few hits in South Africa, and so it went. And then in 1985, we came to the USA. We recorded an album in Nashville, believe it or not. And lo and behold, we found... I'm going into a little bit more depth here, because it's actually an interesting twist to the tale, which helps to form the character that I am today.
Right.
And then we found, to our shock and horror, that because we were white South Africans, no American label would touch us with a barge pole. While a lot of the black South African musicians were being signed up and wined and dined in Los Angeles, nobody would even talk to us. It was a very interesting experience.
Because of apartheid.
Absolutely, there was a thing going on called a cultural boycott that very few people around the world are aware of. And if you're a white South African musician, your career that's it. You were doomed. And so I went back to South Africa and carried on in the music industry, and slowly but surely got involved in various other things like advertising and so forth. And I was a writer in advertising.
But let me just interject for a second here. Didn't you write a song that got you in trouble with the government, that you were harassed and they even tapped your phone at one time?
Oh yeah, I actually wrote that while living in Los Angeles for a year, trying to get a deal. And then the little Steven Van Zandt released that song called Ain't Gonna Play Sun City, which was an anti-apartheid song with all the American musicians, and I mean, all the big names were in it, and it was not a very accurate depiction of the situation, and I got quite upset by that, and I thought, well, if anyone should write that kind of song, it should be a South African from an accurate perspective, and I wrote a song called We Come From Johannesburg, which is a very staunch anti-apartheid song. And I went back to South Africa, and I spent every last cent I had recording it and releasing it, thinking that this is going to be the big thing that, you know, gets people to sit and pay attention to the apartheid problem and so forth, because I'd just come from America and I experienced the reverse discrimination myself. And it just unfortunately backfired, because it was banned, and I was threatened a few times, and it was interesting times.
Very, very interesting. I had a similar conversation with Wayne Herschel. At any rate, Michael, from an early age, you were called a jack of all trades, which in today's society is frowned upon, because society wants you to specialize in something. Get married and live your life in the proverbial matrix. Anyone who deviates is told, what's wrong with you? Tell us why you think society, and we'll get into all the research in a minute, but tell us why you think society has built those expectations around us. It's as if they don't want us to find the truth of who we are.
Well, it's exactly what you're saying, Mel. It's and I was just driving with my girlfriend Daryl today on our way from Tampa to Panama City, and talking about exactly that kind of thing. Because as you start to wake up, and as you grow in consciousness, and you start to, your eyes open to the truth